We are speaking today with a special guest. Her name is Laura Patterson. She is author of Fast Track Your Business, and it's a book about revenue generation and marketing and building a sustainable, ongoing business, and it's kind of wrapped around growth and achievement. And so I wanted to have her on because I think, first, a lot of what's going on today with the disruption because of the COVID-19 virus. But once we get beyond that, I think there's going to be other issues, which is how do we take our business and rebuild it? And I think interviews like this with experts are really critical for us to listen to when there's a little bit of downtime, so that when we're back up, we can take some of the things that we learned in here. So anyway, Laura, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bill. Delighted to have an opportunity to be with you and your community.
Well, we are too. And I think the best way to begin is for you to give me a little perspective that you have. I mean, you're in the day-to-day B2B space, and you are experiencing, as we all are, the COVID-19 disruption, I'll call it. So give me a couple minutes on your perspective of it all, and what have you learned from it, and what can we learn from you?
You and I, we've been around for a while, and we've certainly seen a lot of twists and turns, and this is certainly one of the biggest turns we've probably all experienced. And it's, for organizations of all sizes, this has been extraordinarily disruptive. And for everyone, I'm sure, for a lot of us, created a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. But I have a tremendous amount of faith in people, and particularly in the United States. And I do believe that we will harness whatever we need to harness in terms of innovation and creativity and energy and awe and determination. And we will come out on the other side of this. I don't know, for some companies, I'm sure coming out will be much harder than others. And I think a lot of that has to do with how customer-centric they have been and will be, as to how well they'll be, how successful they will be when we are on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of leads us into the topic. I saw what you did there. Kind of leads us into the topic of your book and the whole notion of customer centricity. And so tell us, give us a minute or two background on you. And I know a little bit of it after reading the introduction, but tell us a little bit, acquaint us on how you got to be the Laura Patterson you are today.
Okay, well, I'll try to make that short. My first real job, I mean, I've had some other jobs, but my first real job out of college was within the financial services industry. And I had the pleasure of working for, and privilege of working for, a remarkable person. I talk about this. I even have a blog post on this somewhere in the customer service blog post. And my title, this is quite a number of years ago. I'm not going to give away how many years ago, but decades ago. And my title was Customer Relationship Manager. And this is long before we had any tools that we have today. And I know you're very familiar with CRM tools, Bill. And my job was essentially, initially, to create a customer segmentation model, and then to help grow the share of wallet of the customer base. So that was where I started, was really on the science side of marketing, right out of the gate, on the customer side of marketing. And from there, ended up through a number of other opportunities, healthcare, and eventually to a startup that had a application software product that ran on a Wang 2200 in the healthcare industry. So I know I'm dating myself. And that led me ultimately, and in that role, I was responsible for both for all of the entire customer lifecycle, find, keep, and grow. Mm-hmm. From there ended up in Austin, which is where I am today, in '82 for another little startup in the microcontroller business known as Motorola. Mm-hmm. And I had a wonderful career there, 14 years, all on both on the acquisition and retention side, ending my career there as the customer brand strategy and loyalty, responsible for the customer brand strategy and loyalty initiative. And that took me back out to financial services, where I had the chance to take some of those ideas and architect a customer loyalty framework for the banking industry, and then into another enterprise software company. And in 1999, I co-founded VisionEdge Marketing, and we've been all about taking a customer-centric outcome-based approach to accelerating organic growth for our customers in the B2B space. Hopefully that wasn't too long.
Okay. No, that's good. I always like to get a bearing on how you have kind of accumulated your vision of the world. And so that was very helpful. So let's fast forward to today and tell us about your book. And I'm particularly interested in the circle of traction idea and model that you use. And I know in the limited time we have, you could probably spend 2.5 hours on that or more. So if there's any way for us to boil it down to the 7 or 8 components, and then maybe take a look at the marketing or sales, since our audience is primarily interested in sales and marketing, maybe we could spend a little bit more time on those functions or those slices of the pie, if that's okay. But give us a sense for the circle of traction, how you came up with it, and let's see how we can move through that quickly and get to the sales and marketing stuff.
Sure. So Circle of Traction is a framework that we developed at VisionEdge Marketing when we started in 1999 and have been using it ever since. And it is essentially the idea that you need to be customer-centric at the outset, and you need to have insights and intelligence, actionable insights and actionable intelligence based on data that you derive from customers and the market and the ecosystem that you're in. And that helps you determine what you're going to do next in order to grow organically. And it takes you through various aspects of that growth, all the way from setting your performance targets, which is, I think, an important message, particularly for sales and marketing, which are the primary engines of growth for every company. Of course, you can't grow if you don't have something to sell that customers want. But then eventually you have to create a buying climate, and that's marketing's job, and have a very keen understanding of the customer buying journey in order for the salespeople to be successful. But in the performance target setting aspect, we talk about the fact that we don't really market and sell the buckets of revenue. Those are real customers at the end of the day that we need to engage and have a relationship with. And so when you set revenue targets, oftentimes you create a tremendous amount of ambiguity and actually the misalignment that can often occur between marketing and sales. Once you know that, you move to the next stage, which is having a really good strategy. And we're really not just talking about sales and marketing strategy, but actually a business strategy on which will be the foundation of what marketing and sales will do. And that will lead to decisions that you make around segmentation and personas and everything else that will ultimately lead to, and that we call and encompass in what we call the upstream of marketing, that will lead to the downstream, which is where sales and marketing often are moving at their fastest pace, which is where the execution and the actions occur that engage customers and move them through their buying journey and motivate them to want to learn more about your offer and how it will help them be successful.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you here real quick, because you talked about the buying journey, and yes, everyone's talking about the customer journey, the buying journey, whatever it is, and I want you to explain it simply for me, because I've heard so many explanations of it, very few of which make sense. And so explain it to me, do your best about really putting it in layman's terms for what is the buyer journey. How would you describe it?
That's a great question. And I agree with you. It's a buzzword that a lot of people don't use well. We talk about it and have been talking about it for a very long time, is the steps and actions that customers take as they explore how they're going to solve a problem or take advantage of an opportunity, and what will be the best partners and products or solutions that will enable them to do so.
Okay. That's succinct. And I like the idea of speaking to problems or opportunities. So what would be an example of a step one? And you can use an example in your world or in one of your clients' worlds, but give me an example of what step one. Does my furnace explode? And that's step one. And so I go and start looking for furnace installers, or do I have this notion in my mind that I wonder if my furnace is ready to explode? I'm just looking for the starting point. What typically is it in a B2B arena?
Well, I think we can use the moment right now as an example. And often it is a triggering event like we have right now. But imagine all the schools right now that are scrambling to figure out how they're going to do distance learning. Many of them have been offering something, but quite a few have not. And to do that, I'm going to take you to the B2B side of it, because that's my area of expertise, but it has huge implications, obviously, to the teachers and students and parents. So they're scrambling to do that, and that takes a lot of technology, right? I mean, distance learning is so we've been, okay, let's face it, there's been distance learning for many, many years. It used to be called correspondence courses, but in today's world, we think of it as being using technology like video conferencing and Chromebooks or some other kinds of tools and tablets and other types of capabilities. And so that takes an IT organization that can set that all up and support and service it. So now all of a sudden, the demand that the IT organization has is gone through the roof as they try to get all that programs, all that technology put in place. And so that's a triggering event. And they're thinking, okay, now I'm going to have all these people that I need to support that are going to have questions, many of them who have very little experience in doing this type of work, whether it's the teachers, the parents, and or the students. And so I'm going to get a lot of service requests. So I can't I'll be crushed. My team will be, service and support teams will be crushed if we just have people calling us and texting us and chatting with us, and we don't have some way to organize those service requests. So I have a triggering event on what do I need to put in place to help the help desk be able to do this in an efficient, productive, and effective way that will also support parents, teachers, and students and create a good learning experience for them. So that's a triggering event. That's step one. I got a problem. I got to figure out how to do that. So
then as a marketer, as a person who, let's say, is in the space that you just described there, they're IT consultants or distance learning consultants for the exercise, I'm not sure it matters. Are you suggesting then that we, from a marketing standpoint, we create something that kind of helps them sort through what are all the things they need, like a white paper or like a checklist or like some type of a free online course where if you are a school IT person and you're getting ready to implement distance learning, then sign up for our free webinar on blah, blah, blah. Is that kind of the thinking that you bring with you?
Yes, but you're too early, Bill.
Okay.
So at that stage, I've got a problem, right? And what am I going to do? Well, in today's world, what we typically, first step we do is we head over to our handy dandy computer and we bring up Google and we type in some keywords. And so what's most important at this point in their journey, the very first step is to be discoverable. Remember in the old days, if we had a problem, we opened up the yellow pages and we started scanning. We didn't get any kind of a checklist or anything, or we might have seen Shell Answer Man or something like that on TV. But the point being, we have to be discoverable. And so that's the very first thing we need to work on is how do we be discoverable when they go and do that search? And how do we be also ultimately, hopefully, referenceable as they reach out to their community and their network and the ecosystem and start asking questions like, well, how did you solve that problem? Who did you go to, right? So that's the very first steps. And then as they go through the journey, and there are other stages in the journey, there will be things that we will need to have. But in that very first step, they're exploring all kinds of options. And there's a variety of solutions to their problem. And they haven't really decided on which option or which provider. They're just in that investigative, exploratory stage. And so being discoverable is what we need to do, which is why SEO, as you can imagine, and websites are so critical in this early stage.
So when I'm a sales professional and I'm a B2B and let's say I'm in the medical device business or capital equipment business, and a guy like Bill Caskey comes along and says, you know what, you need to be thinking about the videos that you're shooting on LinkedIn. You need to up your work there, and let's get out in front of this and let's shoot very valuable videos. One of the things they need to be considering is, where are people on the journey that they most want to target? Is that fair?
Yes, and I love talking about medical devices. It's a great industry we love working in, and it's one of our top 5 customer segments that we support. And to your point, you need to understand that there are different things you need at different places in the journey, because what the customer is looking for at each step is different. And customers leave a lot of breadcrumbs along the way. And we have a tendency inside to think that they're much further along oftentimes than they might actually be.
Right, I agree.
And so once they've done that, they go down the investigation stage, the very next things that they often are doing is identifying which solutions they seem will be the best fit. Not your solution yet, not my solution yet, just, okay, I'm going to go down this particular path. So back to the medical device space, we'll just kind of move over to that since you brought it up. Let's say I have a particular problem. The patient does, and that problem might be, we'll make this up, something bad is happening in the skeleton, somewhere in the skeleton, right? Whether that's your spine or your knee or your hip or whatnot, and you've gone to the doctor. And the doctor is telling you, oh, this is what's happening, right? And then he gives you a diagnosis, or she gives you a diagnosis, and you go online and you start looking up what that means. And there's probably a whole bunch of different things about what you can do to feel better. It might be chiropractor, acupuncture, might be surgery, could be a bunch of things that are in the investigation phase. In the identification phase, you're starting to narrow down what you think are the best protocols. You still haven't picked which provider, but you're saying, I don't think I'm going to do the chiropractor thing. Maybe you even try the acupuncture thing or physical therapy, but eventually you recognize that you might have to do surgery. So there may be a couple of different options as you go through your identification and you kind of phase it out, what your plan is. And then you move into the evaluation phase. So what do you need in that investigation stage as a sales and marketing person is helping them figure out what is the right solution given where they are with their problem, right? Because maybe surgery is not quite an option yet for, maybe they can't afford the downtime just now. Maybe when you have that particular surgery, you're going to be out for 6 weeks. So that might not be something they can do at that moment in their life. And so they take a different option, having gone through their investigative stage. So how do you help them through each of those phases? We'll have different things. Once they get, into evaluating all their choices, they're going to need different kinds of material. And then eventually, as they move further and further in and move closer to selecting the actual provider, that's where things like customer references and comparison charts and calculators and all kinds of other things become important. Whereas earlier, it might be things, to your point, of different kinds of videos or white papers or other types of content.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We're speaking today with Laura Patterson, who is author of Fast Track Your Business. And we kind of got cornered down here in this buyer journey. But this is really good, because I think every sales professional listening and every sales leader, we have a lot of VPs of sales managers consuming this as well, sometimes it just requires you to get out of your business long enough to say, what does the journey really look like? And I don't think enough companies have really stopped long enough. And this is a good time to do it. You're kind of stopped anyway. Just look at it and say, what's the typical customer journey? What does a buyer go through? And I think you'll find when you start examining that, there are some things that you're missing to help them move through the journey quicker, maybe toward you, maybe not. But I think there are some obvious things that'll come to light if you stop long enough to look at it from an unbiased standpoint.
And Bill, so what's important is that this thing that we're talking about, this customer journey, in the circle of traction, it's the 4th out of 7 what we call nodes in the circle. So you're pretty far along in the work you need to do as a company, as a business leader, before you get here. And I think that's really an important point I want to make, is that a lot of people want to start right here and off they go. But this is the 4th step out of 7. Yeah. So you've done a bunch of other things before you've ever gotten to this step.
That's so true. Man, that's so true. Well, listen, we are talking today to Laura Patterson. And Laura, your book is available on Amazon. And I'm sorry, we need to close it up here because we didn't get through all 7. What we need to do, A, my listeners need to read your book. And B, we need to have you back sometime when we can get into a little bit more detail on what the subsequent steps are. But people will be able to find it in the book. And I really appreciate you being on today, especially during the crazy times that we're in. And so thank you for your time. And it was a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Thank you for having me. And I hope everyone takes away at least one good idea.